The purpose of this video is to go over some tips on how to make an effective PowerPoint. First, let's talk about making slides. You want to keep your design very simple. I recommend going with the pre-formatted designs that are both in PowerPoint and Google Slide. They provide a lot of balance, but also they're designed to be very pleasing to the eye, so it won't become a distraction for your audience. Second, go through and pick a font that's very easy to read. A lot of times kids want to put a script font or something that looks like cursive writing on there. And it looks good when it's on your screen, but once we project that and it kind of stretches it out, it tends to get kind of blurry and be very, very difficult to read. Next, you want to leave room for highlights, such as images. Okay, so don't pack your slides full of so much text that it's going to be overwhelming for us, or that it's just that we're reading slide after slide after slide. Pictures turn out to be really important as you do these presentations. Next, we need you to decorate scarcely but well. So pick the pictures you want really carefully. Okay, be choosy on there. Don't just go through and put every picture you can find, or try and add a whole bunch of things on there just because you thought the pictures looked good. Okay, and then lastly, be consistent with the fonts and colors. Okay, don't go through and switch all the colors on every slide or change your fonts on every slide. Pick one theme and go with it through the entire presentation. Next, be really, really careful when you copy and paste. I should never see you copy and paste like an entire slide straight off of a college website. This is actually a slide that a student made a few years ago when they did the University of Michigan. And you can see on here they went through and just put way too much text. But what's really important is as you look at it, okay, and the audience will pick up on this and I'll pick up on this, this is just straight copy and paste. You can see even like down here on the bottom, you can still see some of the resource information off of there. These, of course, are all links. Okay, when you put this much on there, this much text on a slide, you're going to want to read it rather than just kind of talk freely to us. And when you do that, that's kind of a recipe for disaster on a presentation. Your audience is going to get really bored. And quite honestly, you're going to start going through and it's easy to get lost as you try and read this much information to us. Next, when you're choosing a color scheme on there, you want to make sure you have a lot of contrast. Okay, so either put a light colored font on a dark background or a dark colored font on a light background. But especially when we project, you're going to lose some of that contrast when it's going up from the projector to the screen. So making sure you have a lot of contrast is important. There's even times when you can go through and look at your screen, like you might put like black on a dark blue font. A dark blue font on a black background, or black font on a dark blue background, and on your screen you can read it really well, but when we project it we won't be able to see anything. Now, for those of you that like to use pictures as your background, they look kind of cool. Like this is, I believe, I want to say it's Cal Santa Barbara. It might be a different school in there, but anyway, and it's a great picture. It really is. The problem with it is you can't get enough contrast. So in this one, I put one set of text up in the ocean up there, and I have enough contrast so that you can read that. But when you get down to the bottom one, the lack of contrast makes the slides difficult to read. Because there's so much going on there, it's really kind of hard to read that bottom set of text. Okay, so you want to be really careful when you do this. In fact, a lot of times the only way it's effective is if you put a text box and then you color in the text box, but then you kind of ruin your picture. So you're much better off just putting a picture on one half of the slide than you are it's much better to do that than it would be to make the entire picture your background. Next, let's talk about color. Okay, when you apply color to your slides, you want to use it sparingly and make sure that it's effective. Okay, you're going to weaken the effect of the color if you use too much of it. So if you're using it to emphasize a word or something like that, that tends to work pretty well. But if you look down at the last two bullets on here, the don't weaken your effect by using too much color at any one time. Okay, the second one, or the last bullet on the page, is much, much harder to read because we've overemphasized the use of color. All right, the next thing is the idea of keep it simple and straight, or keep it straight and simple. Keywords only, no sentences on here. If you put a sentence on there, you're going to want to read it to us. And we really don't want to go through 10 or 15 different presentations where everybody just projects a book up on the screen and you just read to us the whole time. I want you to talk about it. Remember, the point of the presentation is to be a visual aid. It's just going to be up on the screen to remind you what you're going to talk about. Okay, so talk freely while you're up there. It'll give the impression that you really know and understand your information much better than if you read everything that's off the slide. Next, we want you to add images. Okay, have more images than text. Okay, use images to really get your message across, not necessarily to decorate. Okay, it's going to reinforce. So like this particular picture here, this is from the University of Michigan as well. This is from the Mud Bowl. Okay, now if I was presenting this, I would go through and start telling you all about the Mud Bowl and how important this particular game is to the University of Michigan. It's a tradition, in fact. I had a student a couple years ago whose grandfather played in it, his father played in it, I think his uncles played in it. And they take this thing seriously. I mean, guys come out of this with broken noses, broken bones. They tear clothes. I mean, it is a really physical game. The guys on the side all paid some money to raise money for charity. Usually this happens during homecoming week. But if you pick a really good image like this, you can go through and tell a story around it, and you don't even have to have really a whole lot of text on the screen at all. Last thing you want to practice. Know your slides inside and out. Okay, now you see on here, I put again, speak freely. Okay, really important that you just get up there and talk to us about your school or your college. Know your information well. Don't go through and read off of note cards unless you feel like it's absolutely necessary. Just get in there and talk about it and tell us what you found. Speak with confidence. Be loud and clear. Okay, try not to talk too fast. That's something that happens when you're nervous. So the more you practice, the better off you'll be. And then remember some of those tricks we've talked about all the way back in 6th grade about keeping eye contact and how to look at the audience, or at least make it look like you're looking at the audience when you give a presentation. Now, in this particular presentation, you're doing an eye search. Okay, so if you go all the way back to when I started you on your research, okay, you started off with a research question. Okay, now when you present, you're going to go through and talk about those research questions right up front. So you're going to tell us, for example, what I wanted to know about admissions was, and then go through and tell us. Then you're going to tell us the answer to that question. Here's what I found. Okay. Then at the very end of your presentation, you want to reflect and review on how things went. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little demonstration here. All right, so this is Yale University. Okay. Now, my first research question was, how is Yale University organized? Well, what I really wanted to know was, you hear an awful lot about things like Yale Law School, and I wanted to know what different levels existed at Yale, because we tend to really only hear about the graduate levels. Well, what I found was that Yale has 3 different levels. There's Yale College, that's the undergrad. Okay, so that's the one that you would be going to straight out of high school. There's the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, and that one is pretty impressive. You can get a master's degree or a doctoral degree in anything from literature, computer science, economics. Okay, they have quite a few options there at that Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. And then you have the professional schools. So they've got a really impressive music degree that you can get there, but probably the one that's the most famous is either going through Yale's medical school or Yale's law school. All right, the next question I had is, what do I need to know about Yale? So I was kind of just like, where is it? How many students attend? Okay, where do they come from? Well, Yale is located in New Haven, Connecticut. There's roughly 5,000 undergrads, 6,000 undergrads and about 7,000 graduate students. One of the things that's really cool is that New Haven has been voted the most beautiful urban campus in the country several times. So it's a place that if you like that kind of really pretty campus, okay, this one might be a good choice for you. Now, the last thing I wanted to know about was, where do students from Yale come from? And what I found out is that they come from all over the world. I think it was 55 countries in all 50 states. So it's going to be a pretty diverse population, which is something you don't necessarily find at every Ivy League school. Next, I wanted to know about famous graduates. Okay, and this one's kind of a fun one. I found that they have some former presidents. So up here in the top corner, we've got Bill Clinton, a Democrat, and George W. Bush, a Republican. So we've got some balance there between the two parties. But what was really impressive to me were down here. This is Sonia Sotomayor. She's the first Latina on the U.S. Supreme Court. Okay, she's still a member of the U.S. Supreme Court. And then this guy has kind of more of a personal connection for us. This is Byron White. Byron White grew up in Colorado, attended the University of Colorado, so he is a buff, and he is one of the really successful buffs. He went up there as a football player, was a running back, and was really good. He is known as Byron the Whizzer White. He was that elusive running back that was really hard to bring down. After his days at CU, he went on to play in the NFL for a few years. When that career ended, he moved on, went to Yale Law School, got his degree, became a lawyer and eventually a judge, and then was appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court. Okay, so it's just another example of a guy from Colorado worked really hard and made it all the way to the highest court in the land. Now, the last thing, let's come back here for a second. The last thing I want to mention was my process. So in order to go through and find the answers to these questions, I used 3 different websites. I went to Big Future, okay, for the College Board, just to get some basic information about Yale. I used the Yale College website, which was a little hard to navigate through, to be honest, but the more I used it, the easier it got. And then I also used Wikipedia. Okay, that was a good place to go and find some of those famous graduates from Yale. Overall, it was a pretty successful project, I think. It went fairly smoothly, and I found things without a whole lot of trouble. All right, so there's your sample presentation just to give you an idea of what I'm looking for. All right, good luck. If you've got questions, please email me and let me know what your thoughts are or what I can help you with.